when I think of the Atlantic 10, the two coaches that come to mind for me personally as an Atlantic 10 fan are Coach Chaney and yourself. I didn't know if you could talk a little bit about, what it was like competing against him, not only, as an assistant. I know you started off at St. Joe's as assistant, but also as a head coach. And then also maybe your relationship outside of basketball, outside of the competitive realm.
Well, I think that in basketball, and this is going to sound, I don't know, condescending. I don't know the right word, but I think that in college basketball, like coaches that are labeled as geniuses, like they've created something or they've cured a disease or anything monumental. Like we all can have, make a difference in our communities, right? But at the end of the day, we're coaching a game, and hopefully we're coaching it well and our teams are playing well, that our schools and the sport can be lifted up and the profession. So when I went to St. Joseph's as an assistant, I was aware of John Chaney because I had played Division III basketball at Widener. One of our rivals was Chaney, and John Chaney was the coach. 1979, Chaney was going to the Division II national championships in Springfield, Missouri. Widener, where I was an assistant coach, we were going to the Division III national championships. The gates for the plane were next to each other. So there was a lot of kind of intertwining. John Chaney started at Simon Gratz High School. I played at St. Joseph's Prep. One of the teams we played was Simon Gratz High School. So it goes way back. I remember him coaching in high school and college at Chaney more than he would remember me as a player. I was an okay guy and on good teams. So when I got to St. Joseph's as an assistant and trying to look at what is it, what makes them different? And I would say to you that their zone defense was different than anybody else, what anybody else was doing, right? So in my world, when people say geniuses, no, they're good coaches, Hall of Fame coaches, tons of respect. But what there really are is we are all great thieves. We take from each other, we name it something else, and then we go about our business. Two exceptions to that. The Princeton offense with Pete Carrill and the Temple zone with John Chaney. And it was, I'm going to go way back. People aren't even going to remember it, but it was the Rubik's Cube of its time. Like you couldn't figure it out. And we spent hours and hours and hours of film and ideas and plans, and we couldn't beat them. We just couldn't beat them when I was an assistant coach. And when I started as the head coach, it was the same thing. And I kind of created in my mind a mathematical formula. It wasn't proven. It was just, well, what's that formula? Well, the formula is 10 offensive rebounds or more, 10 threes or more, and more than 10 foul shots, less than 10 turnovers. You could give yourself a chance. And we worked through it. And when it started to turn and we could beat them, and we beat them on a regular basis after a long stretch. We beat them one night at the Palestra. They were the number 5 team in the country. And we just kind of played around. They had Pepe Sanchez. And we played around with a zone, man-to-man, some box and one, some triangle, and it worked. But it worked that one time. Yeah. Because he was going to stay true to exactly what he did, Nathan. Like he was not going to deviate. Yeah. I was just fascinated with his, and I'm saying this in the most respectful way. his refusal to give in.
Hmm.
He didn't give in to the players acting the fool. He didn't give in to opposing gyms. He flourished and relished the idea of going on the road. He didn't give in to, well, you did this, so I'm going to do that. He knew exactly what he was teaching. He taught it at a Hall of Fame, legendary level, and there was no deviation. Towards the end of his time at Temple, we started to beat them on a regular basis. And I always took that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Because Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame idea, creative in terms of, well, this zone is different than any other zone. And you knew when you stared down that sideline that this was an all-time great coach. So, and I would study these other teams, I'd study these other teams and say, why were they successful?
Yeah.
And I never found a common thread. You had to have really good players, but you had to believe in what you were doing, because it wasn't that you were going to beat them by lack of what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just funny, the zone, because I was talking to Coach Penders, Coach Skinner as well. Like I said, as I mentioned, as a Rhode Island guy, especially we were talking about the '88 Temple team, probably arguably their best team ever. And even Silk Owens, who, he played at URI, and just everyone said that zone defense was just, especially that '88 team, it just was almost impossible to break. So yeah.
They had some things that they did, like their big men did not offensive rebound.
Mm-hmm.
So they were always back. So you didn't get transition baskets.
Yeah.
They didn't foul. So you never got to the foul line. And they never turned the ball over, right? During John Chaney's stretch, they were probably top 5. This is a negative. They were top 5 in fewest turnovers every single year. They were not going to turn it over. They were not going to foul you. You were not going to get transition. And he knew way before, like he would be spinning in his grave if he heard John Chaney and analytics. Like that wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like that didn't exist. He knew you couldn't make enough shots.
Yeah.
And now when you factor in that team, and if you go back in time, all the teams that you've seen, what did they have? They had big wings. So when you say, oh, it was a 1-2-2 zone, somebody else would say to you, no, it was a 1-3-1 zone. What it was these wings were just extraordinary, and they allowed the ball around the zone, but not into the zone. And it really didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was Wednesday night in Olean against St. Bonaventure, if it was Saturday night in the Palestra against Villanova, or if it was against Michigan in an Elite 8 game. This is what we do. Let me see you beat it.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. And, obviously, because you coached against him for so long, outside of the basketball court, outside of competition, what was your relationship? That's kind of a general question, I know, but, any stories that come to mind on kind of how you were able, to interact and be so obviously close to him, someone who, like I said, you competed against for so long?
Well, I think that one of the things right away is the Philadelphia thing, right? It's real. There's 6 Division I schools in a 20-mile radius. We raise a lot of money and have raised a lot of money and did raise a lot of money for Coaches versus Cancer. We were at the same high school games often. We were trying to do what we could for Philadelphia. So like, there are so many things running through my head.
Yeah.
John Chaney and I were invited. we were invited by Bill Walton to meet John Kerry when John Kerry was running for president. We went to his speech, and then we were taken by Secret Service down to a basement. And John Chaney and I were going to meet John Kerry. And we were sitting downstairs, and John and I were making small talk, and John Kerry walks into the room. And John Chaney reaches into his pocket and brings out like a camera that you would buy at a drugstore, like a CVS.
Yep,
right?
yep.
We got to get CVS in there for Rhode Island. Come on,
exactly.
man.
There you go.
Like I need them to be your sponsor, your lead
Yeah.
sponsor, right? So a camera, a little yellow camera. He takes it out of his pocket and he looks around and he said to the Secret Service people, "Would you take a picture?" And he took a picture with John Kerry's wife, who was at one time married to a senator in Pennsylvania who had passed away. John Kerry's wife, John Kerry, and John Chaney. And he's taking pictures. And then he looks at me and says, "Phil, you want to get in the picture?" So of course I get in the picture.
Yeah.
They take the picture and they hand him back this, like, think about this. There's nobody on your podcast is going to say, "Well, how did he get the film?" He had to take it to be developed, the film.
Wow.
And then he turns and John Kerry says, "Coach, what can I do for you?" And John Chaney went into a conversation about the Supreme Court because he felt that the Supreme Court would hold the key to educational programming for the inner city. My mouth dropped.
Yeah.
Not that John Chaney wasn't an educated man, but that was on his mind, and he was going to make this point to a guy running for president.
Yeah. Wow.
And they took John Kerry into another room for a dinner with big donors. And John Chaney and I are walking out. It was the Franklin Institute, downtown Philadelphia. We're walking out and he looks at me and goes, "That went pretty well, didn't it?" And I was speechless. Like, for one of the few times in my life, I didn't have anything to share with him.
Yeah.
The second story, and it's kind of like it ends up being a combined story, was that John Chaney took up golf late in his career. And he called Nike and he said, "I'm going to take up golf. I want the exact clubs that Tiger Woods uses." So Nike sent him the clubs. We were having a golf tournament, a citywide golf tournament, raising money for Coaches versus Cancer.
Yeah.
And Fran Dunphy was the coach at Penn at the time. He and I were riding around. John Chaney was playing golf. And we rode up to see John take a swing, and Fran Dunphy went into his bag and pulled out the clubs and said, "Coach, you got a little bit of a problem here." And he said, no, I don't. These are the clubs that Nike sent me. But the clubs had, I don't know the right word, they had a wrapping, like a packing wrapping on them.
Yeah.
He never took the wrapping off. He was playing golf with the clubs that had the protective wrapping on them.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Didn't change. He thought we were crazy for bringing that up. Later that year, or maybe the next year, John Chaney and I were in line at a viewing for an all-time great Villanova player and then an NBA player by the name of Paul Arizin. Paul, to this day, is still on, like, if the 75th anniversary of the NBA this year,
Yeah.
Paul Arizin is one of the 75 players named on that. That's how great he was. He played at Villanova. John Chaney and I were in line, long line for his viewing.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be hours in line. So we're talking, and he's talking to me about turnovers. At this point, he had retired, and he was talking to me about turnovers and how you can't turn it over, and it was great.
Yeah.
So I said to him to go to another topic. How's your golf game? And he said, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. He said, in fact, the other day I had an eagle. And I said, John, you had an eagle? And he said, yes. I said, so was it a par 4? And you knocked it in from the fairway? And he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, was it a par 5? And maybe you got a good one for your drive, and then your second shot was short and you chipped in? He said, no. And he looked at me and he said, do you know anything about golf? And I said, yeah, I know a little bit, but like an eagle is that's a really unbelievable. He said, so I hit it, and then I went in and it was on the fringe and I chipped it and it rolled in.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so it was a par 3. That would make it a birdie, John, and not an eagle. And again, he looks at me and he said, you don't know anything about golf. If you hit the ball twice on a hole and it goes in, that's an eagle. And I went, all right, we're going to be in line here for like 3 hours. I cannot debate this. I can't have this
That's amazing.
this conversation.
Yeah.
But he believed what he believed.
Yeah. That's amazing. So do you play golf?
I'm very poor and I never played with John.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's awesome.
when times when I was looking for him, I know some people have suggested Walnut Lane, and Walnut Lane is a municipal course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the city of Philadelphia, like it's in the city. And he would go up there every day.
Yeah.
He would go up there every day and he would sit and he would tell stories and he would go out and play and he would be selective on the holes that he played. But there were times when I was looking for him to sign something and I would go up there. And he would have lunch with these guys or he would play cards with them. And if you went up there and said, well, who's the Hall of Famer? Nah, he was John Chaney.
Yeah.
He was John Chaney. And to think that I had a chance to compete against him, that's memories and relationships.